Merry Christmas. This might be one of the few times that you're not going to see me baking Christmas cookies, making Christmas candy. Instead, we are making a delicious glazed Christmas ham. You know, ham is just, what? It's good, it's traditional, it's something that a lot of our grandmas always had, our moms, and you know, honestly, I think it's really easy. And I think that's why we have it a lot of times for special occasions, because it also evokes those nostalgic flavors and smells. And it can be really a good workhorse for you when you're gonna have a big meal. This year, maybe you're not, so you can go to have a smaller ham. But this one is gonna have, of course, a glaze, but it's also gonna have a cranberry chutney to go with it, because you can't just have a ham. So here's my ham. It is a bone-in ham. I think a bone-in ham is always gonna have a lot more flavor, because it retains that. It hasn't been taken out, and so they haven't had to work with it near as much. But also, a lot of that flavor is up around the bone, so as it cooks, as it is really kind of just like warming up in the oven, it's not going to lose a lot of those extra juices and stuff because the bone will still be in there. So I also here have a spiral cut ham. I don't know if this is a Midwest thing, if it is a whole world thing, but spiral cut hams just mean that when they go and get it ready, they literally go around and cut it around a spiral, so around that center bone. And really what that does is it just makes it easier for you. It does the work of a lot of the cuts, so when you go to serve it or go to put it on a platter, you just have to make some good cross cuts and you get some really nice pieces of ham. So you can either do it like this or not, and you can just slice it as you always would and carve it. I just sometimes like a spiral cut ham, saves on time. So here we have our ham. You can adjust the pounds up or down depending how many you want to serve or how many leftovers you want. And I think it is important to go with a good ham. I'm using actually one that is nitrate free in the sense that they did not process it or smoke it with extra nitrates. There are some that naturally occur in salt when it is smoking, but a lot of the processed or overly processed commercial hams are gonna be pumped full of nitrates. That actually can give some people some headaches. It doesn't always feel good. So if you can, I just like to get one that doesn't have near as much of the preservatives in it, but it still has the delicious cured flavor and fragrance. So for a ham, the reason I love it, it's pretty much cooked already. A ham has already gone through that curing process. So what you really wanna do is warm it up, heat it up, and serve it. That's what's nice about them. So here in my roasting pan, I have my ham, and I have it cut side down. Depending on what size ham you have, you'll have different, but I'm gonna do my cut side right down like that. I'm just gonna put it right there, and I'm gonna put a little bit of water in there. That's just gonna help so it doesn't get dry, so it doesn't, stick to the bottom or anything. Just a little bit of water, just enough to bring it up slightly. And then I'm gonna cover it with some foil. So at first, I let it come to room temperature. I let it come out of the fridge for a little bit just so it didn't have quite that chill on it. And now I'm gonna cover it just to kind of create almost like a little Dutch oven almost of sorts. And it's gonna just help trap in the heat and get it warm. So I'm gonna pop it in the oven. It's gonna start smelling amazing. That's what I love. It smells just like grandma's house on a Sunday. We're gonna leave it there. And we're gonna work on our glaze. So you don't have to glaze a ham. It's just kind of an added bonus. And it's one of those things I love to do around the holidays, love to do around Christmas, because it's just that extra special touch. It makes it look better, adds a little bit of flavor. So in a small kettle here, I'm gonna add some butter. Then we're gonna put in some honey. So what the honey really does, yes, of course it sweetens it, but also then when we actually go to start glazing it, it's gonna create almost that crackly crust on the ham, because what is honey? It's sugar. So sugar in the oven, it can caramelize, it can brown, and so that's really what you're doing here. Then I'm gonna add some mustard. Dijon mustard, because it has that good flavor. And then we're gonna add a few spices that just kinda help it along. So a little bit of cinnamon. I love cinnamon, and we're not gonna go overboard here, but we're gonna add enough so it just, flavors it. The thing about ham is that curing process, the smoking process, it has a lot of strong flavor. So it can really withstand some good warm spices, some extra flavor. A little bit of clove. Clove can overpower, and I know some of us are clove scared. Don't be. If you don't like it, you don't like it, leave it out. But don't be scared. Some garlic. Now, I'm gonna use garlic granulars. Why? Because you know what? Sometimes they're just easier. And that way too, if I put fresh garlic in there, as it's actually basting on the roast, the ham, it can kind of burn and get bitter. So I don't want that to happen. So I'm gonna put in the garlic granulars that are already dry, and then they're gonna just help flavor it with that garlic, but they're not gonna burn. So I went out to my garden, got a little bit too much rosemary in, but I wanted to add I have a good friend that one time said, I just want a whisper of that, which is kind of funny for food, but it does make sense. So we're not gonna actually like cut this all up, but we are gonna put it in here so just as it's melting on the stove, it's gonna flavor it and just give a hint, just a whisper. So we're gonna put this on low. We're gonna let it heat up. The butter's gonna melt. Everything's gonna come together. And then we can start glazing it. So as that's melting and getting ready, we can just put together the chutney. I think a chutney it just adds a nice contrast to the meat. Meat gets really heavy, it's a lot to take in sometimes. So that is why a lot of times there's something a little bit more acidic or something bright to put with meat because it wakes it up. It kind of just helps you understand the flavors better and makes it more interesting. So in here, I'm gonna put fresh cranberries. You know, guys, when things are in season, fresh cranberries are in season, what do? We need to use them because, yeah, you could use frozen too and that'd be fine. But isn't it just feel festive and fun to go to the store and get cranberries? It does. I'm also gonna add, since this is more of a chutney, we're gonna add a dried fruit. We're gonna add dried apricots. They're just slightly chopped up. That's just kind of what you do when you do a chutney. You add some dried fruit to it. It kind of has that sweet, almost sour kind of play, which I like. So I'm gonna take a pear. I'm gonna chop that up too. You can really use any pear. I just kind of like to use whatever I can find that, you know, looks delicious, looks good, maybe is in season. It doesn't matter on the type. You can do, you know, red Anjou. You could do just a Bartlett. It really doesn't matter. So I'm gonna cut it up in somewhat rough chop because the thing is, we're gonna really let this cook together. And while it's cooking, it's really going to condense. And cranberries are one of the fruits that have some of the most pectin in them. So they get really thick, they get really syrupy. They're kind of like the perfect thing to use anytime you want to make like a good sauce because they just have like that perfect texture and consistency. And I really love that. So I always try to find different ways to use them, sweets, savories. So it's just kind of one of those things that can kind of use both. So now to kind of, it needs, if you've ever had a cranberry, what are they? Extremely sour. So they need kind of that play. So we're gonna add some cranberry juice. I just think again, that ups the flavor of it, gives it a little bit more. We're also gonna add some apple cider vinegar. Now, apple cider vinegar, it's gonna have the new bottle, you guys. So, kind of a workout. It's going to have kind of those like, it has the sweetness in it, which I know sometimes when you go to smell vinegar right away, you don't think, oh my goodness, you don't think sweet. You kind of think like, ooh, that's strong and astringent. But it really does have that play in there. And then we're gonna add maple syrup. That's a really good sweetness. And it's what I try to use a lot just because, yeah, it's natural, but it also just has really good flavors and it gets really nice and thicker too, which I like. A little bit of brown sugar. The sugars all kind of act differently. So maple syrup, brown sugar, they kind of both have a different sweetness, so I like to add them both. I'm also gonna add a couple cinnamon sticks. You know, this is so you don't over add the cinnamon, but you just get the flavor of it, which I really like. And then we can pull those out at the end. We're gonna add just, I know if you don't like cloves, but we're gonna add a little bit of clove. I think clove has this amazing ability to kind of really, not only does it have an interesting spice quality to it, it's a real warm spice, so it really kind of brings out the cinnamon. And then just a little sprinkle of some salt. We're gonna put this on the stove. We're gonna let it come to a simmer, and then we're just gonna reduce it and let it sit there and kind of do its thing for a little bit. So I'm gonna put that on low, let it come to a simmer, and let it cook. So I can tell it's starting to cook, and I'm gonna start stirring it just to make sure everything's getting evenly cooked. I'm gonna turn it to a simmer because it's kind of cooking kind of hard. So we're gonna turn it down just a little bit. We're gonna kind of let it covered, we're gonna let it simmer. As this ham is warming up, the glaze is ready. This is just gonna cook together, meld together, and get really delicious. So we're gonna let that sit there. The ham is warming up. After the ham has warmed up quite a bit, we're then gonna start glazing it so it can really just get that beautiful crust on it. It's a good Christmas ham. You guys are gonna enjoy this. The ham has been warming up, so it's getting to a point where it's really starting to warm through, and that's when you wanna start basting. If you start basting right away, the ham in the center of it takes a long time to actually get heated. So you wanna let it first get heated so the basting then doesn't just burn on it. Beautiful, look at that. I mean, it's beautiful. So now for this basting part, we're not gonna cover it when you put it back in because we want it to get that wonderful kind of crust on it. So all my mixture is melted. I'm just gonna start just slathering it on a little bit, and nothing too much here because we're gonna do this a few times. We're not just gonna dump it all on because then it would just kind of go to the bottom. And the thing is, you want it to really coat all those crevices, all those beautiful kind of like peaks and valleys, because that's what's gonna really give it that flavor, that crust. I think meat's one of those hard things, and it's one of those things that a lot of us, you know, it's not usually too pretty. It's just kind of what it is, and sometimes people that do eat meat kind of feel like, oh, I just have to have a meat for the meal. This is kind of a way just to make it a little bit better. It's honestly pretty easy, and it's just kind of a special occasion meal that way. So we have it all covered. I'm gonna keep this on the stove just so it keeps melted. I'm gonna put this back in the oven, and that's gonna help it just start really kind of getting that wonderful crust on it. So we'll do this, probably every 15, 20 minutes for a while to let it really get a good crust on it. So I've been basting this off and on, and at the very end, for the last like 5 minutes, I had the broiler on because I wanted it to kind of get that beautiful, look at all those bubbles coming on, like a caramelization on top. Oh, that's pretty. And it smells so good. That's what I love about ham. It's like you do none of the work. It's smoked already, it's delicious, it's beautiful. I'm just gonna set it out. I'm using, it's a fish spatula. I don't expect everyone to have a fish spatula, but you know what? Sometimes it just works well. So I'm gonna set it over here on a cutting board just for a little bit while I get ready. And as you can see, the spiral cuts already are wanting to come off. So we're gonna let that sit, cool just slightly. Chutney. This was cooking. It was bubbling away. The house smelled really good. So we're gonna take out, right here, we have a cinnamon stick. We have another one. So you can see what I like about this is, especially with a chutney, you wanna kind of see what's in it. So you get the dried apricot, you get, you know, some pieces of like cranberries and some of the pear. So this is to me just delicious to serve with this. It really cuts through the heaviness of the ham because ham has a lot of that rich, strong flavors. This just really cuts through it, so delicious. So for the ham, it is a bone-in ham, like I said, which means it can be kind of a little thing to cut around, but that's why I like these spiral cuts, because we can cut around them fairly easily here. So what I always like to do is start by knowing where my bone is, which is right there. And it's so tender that you really could just cut the bone out if you wanted to, or you could cut around it. So you can kind of decide what style cuts you want. I'm gonna cut right here. We're just gonna start going through. It's of course hot, but look at that. So the spiral cuts go all the way around, they're circular. So instead here what we have now are all these tiny cuts, which are nice. It's like pre-sliced for you, it's ready to go. You can do a regular ham too, don't feel like you can't, you can do whatever you want. And then you can just serve it right away. And that's what I love, is that you can kind of just, you know, take it and just start kind of layering it out. If you have some of the glaze left, you could put it on, but I think there is just enough on those edges. And what we'll do instead is put this all with ham, but then we'll serve it with the chutney. Now, there's a little piece back here. Actually, I'm surprised how much that glaze really comes out. That's delicious. The glaze gives it just like a hint. So ham is a delicious layer on its own. It's smoked, it has that delicious, strong, smoky flavor. That glaze just gives you a little hint of sweetness right away with some of that flavor in it. So when it is mixed with the chutney, when it's served together, one, it looks extremely festive. I mean, this is a Christmas ham. You get the cranberry, you get the ham, you get the delicious kind of seasonal flavors. The clove you don't taste on its own, you just kind of get that hint of season, which I love a hint of season. You know I love Christmas, so that is exactly what I want. I hope you make this ham. I hope you try the glaze, the cranberries, branch out, make something special, because you can do any size you want. As always, what helps me the most is when you guys share these videos around, tag people, put them in your stories, whatever it is. And as always, this recipe is in the description, but it's also on my website, wiseguide.com, where you can find all these recipes I've been making all on Christmas, because this may be a different Christmas this year, but what has been amazing about it is bringing you into my home every day, sharing these videos, sharing Christmas together, and we're just making new memories. So share it around, make it, let me know what you think, and until next time, I'm gonna eat some ham.